Well, hello and welcome back to Control. We have been collecting all of the lore, and I think it's probably about time to do a lore dump. So that's what we're doing here today. So let's dig right in. Initial impressions. Analysis of Hiss Threat, Part 1. Confidential. Initial encounters with the entity known as the Hiss have revealed various behavioral facts. Most notably, the Hiss is able to invade or corrupt control points, altered items, and even humans, radically changing their behavior. Curiously, any person wearing one of the wearable HRA devices that Dr. Darling has been distributing over the past weeks was not affected by this corruption. The only known exception to this fact is the new director, Jesse Faden, who possesses an inherent immunity to the Hiss. This could indicate that she's already been corrupted, but her behavior is so in contrast to that of the other Hiss that I've dismissed the theory. My final observation comes from Miss Faden herself. She's able to cleanse material and organisms of the Hiss corruption. We tested this ability on a Hiss-corrupted entity, but unfortunately the process seems to kill the host. Perhaps the host's physiology becomes reliant on the Hiss? More work to be done. Refer to file redacted for full report. Analysis of Hiss Threat, Part 2. Researchers were sent to transcribe the recursive chant repeated by the Hiss entities. In the interest of safety, this was done with the non-aggressive floating Hiss entities. However, no distinction between this repeating phrase and the one repeated by the more violent Hiss entities was observed. What's the purpose of this repeating string of words? Is this how the Hiss corrupts individuals? Does the chant produce a physical effect? Is it a message? An incantation? We were able to record a first-hand recitation of the chanting. See the corresponding audio record. Refer to file redacted for full report. Analysis of Hiss Threat, Part 3. If we understand the Hiss to be a force based on vibration and resonance, then perhaps their incantation, which is now the agreed-upon term for their vocalizations, is an effort to express that resonance using human vocal cords and speech. Would there be differences if the incantation were recited in a different language? The most common word used is want. Interestingly, every usage of the word is attributed to a you. You want to listen. You want this to be true. You must want these waves to drag you away. Are we the you the Hiss is referring to? Does the Hiss believe humanity, possibly all non-Hiss life, wants to join it, to be consumed by it? Is that its goal? The second most used words are through and time. Is this possibly the Hiss stating how they arrived here, or an indication of its age? There's clear intention in the words. Dismissing the incantation as nonsense, as some of my colleagues recommended, is beyond idiotic. Refer to redacted for full report. Analysis of Hiss Threat, Part 4. To examine the invasion's timeline of events for possible patterns in Hiss behavior. Establishing a timeline is difficult at present because of lack of reliable communications between Bureau sectors and staff. Preliminary models indicate ground zero of the invasion is located within the executive sector. Once it becomes possible to interview surviving personnel, pinpointing the exact location should be feasible. Other outstanding questions that a timeline may help answer. How did the Hiss get past the internal lockdown? How does Hiss resonance advance through space, deliberately or uniformly? What is their ultimate goal? The outside world? A cross-dimensional destination? Refer to redacted for full report. Process and best practices, AWE frequency. For some time now, there's been a steady increase in the annual number of AWEs that the Bureau responds to. Between 2010 and 2015, we responded to redacted AWEs. For comparison, note that we only responded to redacted between 1995 and 2005. Is this a result of redacted, improvement in our detection procedures, or perhaps simply coincidence? We cannot say for sure, which is why this proposal for an AWE task force to be created within the hierarchy of the investigation sector has been compiled. We need to spend more time examining what causes AWEs rather than just containing them. Refer to file 5-95-1737 for full report. Altered examination request airplane wreckage. The airplane in question has been brought in from a private airfield located in the town of Redacted, Cincinnati. It's suspected to be connected to the Redacted AWE. See case file Redacted for details, and is being evaluated for altered status. The plane is currently being stored in the transit corridor in the containment sector, brought there through the New York subway tunnel. Special access redacted. For more information on Tunnel Redacted and links to urban legends centered on ghost stations, abandoned tracks, and redacted, see file 4-12-4521. The plane's black box is currently being evaluated for redacted, and initial readings have been taken by a research team, though no altered status has yet been detected. Refer to file 9-12-8371 for full report. System security evaluation confirmed data breach. Last month, our on-site server experienced an intrusion by unauthorized users. After thorough investigation, it was confirmed that the users only accessed a video file, which contained portions of various Dr. Darling presentations. Investigators were able to track the users through their IP addresses. The following are the confirmed identities of these users: Patrick Struchens, Rubens Noguera, Arturo Kolmiak, Christopher Mills Bowling, Yako Saren. These individuals are in breach of Bureau Code 91 and have been placed under surveillance by our external investigation team. Further action is pending. Read Dr. Yoshimi Takuri. Dr. Yoshimi Takuri, a Japanese citizen residing in Tokyo, has produced a series of guided imagery experience auto recordings that have gained notable popularity around the globe. Due to his unusually swift rise in fame, along with reports of vivid redacted accompanying the use of his tapes, investigations sector staff were asked to look into Dr. Takuri's background. We found no past incidents with an altered occurrence, nor any evidence of involvement with an altered organization. However, agents that attended a signing event reported redacted when hearing Dr. Takui speak. We recommend that the research team obtain an audio recording of Dr. Takui's voice and perform any and all relevant analyses. Based on their findings, the investigation sector will determine next steps regarding Dr. Takui, as well as his eligibility for Prime Candidate Program. Refer to file 7-42-9633 for full report. Dylan Faden Observation. Federal Bureau of Control. Dylan Faden, Daily Observations, Confidential. 9:30 a.m., breakfast is brought. 11:54 a.m., gets out of bed, uses toilet, returns to bed. 11:57 a.m., asks for television to be turned on. Staff do so. 12 p.m., lunch is brought, breakfast is removed. 12:02, eats lunch. 2:38 p.m., uses toilet. 4:03, begins talking to self, recording speech is not possible due to noise from television. 4:07 p.m., becomes upset, throws lunch tray at glass. 4:09, sedated. Crew clean the cell, television turned off. 6:12, comes to, asks for television to be turned on, staff refuse. Asterisk. 6:16 p.m., sleeps. Asterisk. Television privileges were refused due to hostile behavior. Dylan Faden transcript. Transcript of conversation. Subject Dylan Faden for review by Dr. Darling. Note, subject was alone during this outburst. DF. You again. I thought I told you to leave me alone. Why are you showing me this? I can't do anything. Can't you see where I am? Why don't you help me get out of here? You always show me things I can't do anything about. Stop showing me her. I don't care anymore, and I don't care about you. You both left me here to rot. Redacted. I'll dig out my own brains if it means getting rid of you. I don't want you here. Get the message. Subject repeated the phrase redacted numerous times before being sedated at 7:53. Employee incident. Review. Incident in question occurred on redacted and was brought to HR department's attention by the internal security personnel who intervened. According to reports submitted by security camera footage, Agent Filson entered the staff kitchen with the intention of consuming his private meal, a homemade sandwich cut diagonally and packed in a plastic container, but discovered the refrigerator had redacted his meal. Agent Filson began to kick the Bureau-owned appliance as he expressed his frustration in a loud and profane manner. This behavior caused multiple staff members present to become alarmed. Security was alerted soon after. Filson complied with security's commands to desist. Recommendation: Agent Filson was remanded and suspended for the remainder of the ongoing work week. The review committee recommends one non-mandatory counseling session. Jesse Faden, movement tracking, eastward movement. Cause for concern: departs Cheyenne, arrives in Sydney. Departs Sydney, arrives in Des Moines. Departs Des Moines, arrives in Chicago. Departs to Chicago. Arrives in South Bend. Departs South Bend. Arrives in Cleveland. Departs Cleveland. Arrives in Bloomsburg. Departs Bloomsburg. Arrives in New York City. Mold autopsy. The deceased was a redacted-year-old redacted with no significant past medical history. The subject was brought in after being discovered in the active threshold in an early state of decay that is characteristically fungal-based in its appearance. During autopsy, the cadaver's pleural cavities were revealed to be entirely filled by the fungus known as the mold, to an extent that medical staff were forced to put on decontamination suits. The procedure was also hindered by anomalies such as the deceased's high body temperature and undulating torso muscles, presumably, but not provably, caused by trapped gases. Routine samples as well as tissue samples requested by Dr. Underhill were successfully extracted. However, their rapid retrogression outside of the host body needs to be noted. Cause of death: mold ingestion. Refer to file 5-94-2716 for full report. P6 victim autopsy. Case 45-HQ-121. Case summary. Agent killed during redacted involving redacted, codenamed P6. Autopsy findings. 1. Blunt force injuries of the head and neck. 2. Extensive trauma of the abdominal region. A. Lacerations and contusions of the upper and lower torso. B. Fracture of the spinal cord between the L1 and L2 vertebra. C. Avulsion fracture of the 3rd through 10th ribs, left and right. 3. Blunt force injuries of the extremities. A. Abrasions, lacerations, and contusions of the extremities. B. Dislocation of left and right elbow. C. Dislocation of left and right knee. Conclusion. After examination, it was determined that the cause of death was internal bleeding that occurred when the redacted was controlled through his redacted. Panopticon Methods Proposal. Process and Best Practices. Panopticon Containment Procedures Proposal. In this proposal, I'd like to explore the matter of the containment policy. When an altered item enters the oldest house, we thoroughly investigate any possible combination of actions or words or material that'll prevent the item from applying its altered effect. However, I work with these entities every day, and I have a good reason to believe that less convoluted form of containment is possible. The items crave redacted. If we initiated a series of redacted praising the items, or perhaps incorporating their images into pieces of redacted that could be visited through the Bureau, I believe the altered items would behave without needing to resort to redacted or redacted, which only lead to the items feeling mistreated. If we treat them like criminals, we can't be surprised when they try to escape. Refer to file 4-83-4382 for full report. Salvador's ID. It should never have been accessible to low-clearance staff in the first place. Lynn Salvador. Sealed Threshold Account. Threshold Management. Retrospective. Threshold 9D. Threshold with effect redacted, manifested in the containment sector in the middle of the redacted department. Simultaneously, numerous redacted appeared in the area, injuring and killing many redacted. After rescue operations were completed and redacted, rangers were sent in to discover the threshold's epicenter. The sheer amount of redacted made the expedition impossible. The area was sealed off after removing the clocks proved an impossible task. The department was relocated and the area abandoned. Researchers theorize that the threshold introduced unstable matter to our dimension, which adopted the form of the redacted as redacted when introduced to more stable redacted. Refer to file 9-51-3981 for full report. Federal Bureau of Control television show proposal. Based on the success of America Overnight, we'd like to propose the creation of a television series that presents superstition and skeptical thought as entertainment in order to popularize these concepts among the civilian population and create less resistance to redirecting information regarding public paranatural events. We can also use a solid media outlet to test paranatural concepts on civilian audiences, seeing how they react to certain facts presented as fiction in the event that the Bureau ever decides to make certain realities public knowledge. There are various show licenses that we could purchase and reboot rather than starting from scratch. One particular property seems promising, especially considering its content and tone are precisely what we're looking for. It's called Night Springs. It's been off the air for a few years now. It's from Alan Wake. The Tennyson Report. So sad, so strange, the days that are no more. For years, the Federal Bureau of Control has been wrongfully forcing a philosophy upon itself and its people. This philosophy is known to you all as science. We all realize that the concepts we explore here are mystic ones, with arcane thinking required to understand them, yet we insist on using words like paranatural and para-utilitarian to create the illusion of a scientific structure, a tidy little system. The Bureau is desperate to stand with the closed-minded cult of logic and data that's overrun our society. If a thing cannot be quantified, then we dismiss it outright. We live in an age that is openly hostile to faith in the veiled forces governing our reality. I must remain anonymous for fear of reprisal from the anti-esoteric bureaucrats watching us from their plush offices. Those same bureaucrats, Trench and Darling chief among them, have been steering us away from the Bureau's arcane foundations for decades now. It's time we corrected course. If you stand with me, share this message. We're not alone. Shipping Manifest, Willow AWE, Inventory List of Recovered Materials, a hollow sphere, stone-like material, vitrified soil, redacted pieces of various sizes and colors, animal carcass, possibly canine, rusted metal bucket, leather wallet, aged shotgun cartridge. All materials go to the investigation sector for further analysis. Album cover, Old Gods of Asgard, Rebirth, Greatest Hits. I was 9 or something when I found Dad's Old Gods album. I became a huge fan instantly. Jesse Phaeton. Mirror Altered Item. Altered Item Examination Proposal. A160, aka the Mirror. This proposal is to finally determine the precise nature of the reflected space within the altered item. Is it transplanar, psychologically generated, or rooted within our own dimension? How does the altered item know the space in its vicinity well enough to reflect it? Why does it reflect some materials but not others? Is the space a parallel reality? If so, then we need to consider that while we possess the physical end of the mirror, someone else owns the other. What purpose might they use it for? Can they walk through into our own world? What are their motives? Lastly, to what purpose does the altered item produce the reflections of individuals that enter it? Can these reflected entities leave the altered item? As with all altered items, we need to attempt to distinguish if its behavior is redacted. Refer to File 5-12-8251 for full report. Mirror Containment, Altered Item Behavioral Study, A160 containing the reflection. Summary. A160, the mirror, does not reflect its surroundings with perfect accuracy. The environment seen in its glass contains slight distinctions. It's unknown why the mirror does this. If there's any redacted, then it's something we can't perceive. The popular theory is that the mirror has a goal in mind, that it reflects the world it wishes were real, suddenly replacing our reality with its own. Well, certainly far-fetched, the theory is worth noting here as a warning not to underestimate the mirror. The specially designed black rock panels have been installed to prevent access from our side, or the mirrors. For added security, a particular arrangement of the panels is required to open the door. Refer to File 9-15-7412 for full report. Progress Report, Active Threshold, Mold Research. So you want to know how my mold research is getting on, Casper? Here it is. Microscopic organisms, similar in appearance to redacted, construct the architecture of the mold. I do not understand if these redacted are the original disseminators of the mold or are bitten by some fungal infection. The mold is the most prolific and durable organism I've ever seen. I theorize there is a mold source located somewhere in our side of the threshold, rooted here to accelerate growth in our dimension. I refer to this yet unknown source as Mold 1. The mold produces an enticing aroma to encourage human consumption of itself. It propagates in the chest cavity and quickly subsumes the entire body, seizing control of motor functions. This behavior was not observed when I first arrived, which means the mold has adapted to our presence, targeting our biological imperatives as a way to spread. It is a truly ingenious little thing. A full report will be ready soon. Keep your slacks on. Examination of paranatural topics, object of power, and altered item distinctions. While altered items and objects of power may seem similar at first, it's important to note some very key distinctions. Firstly, objects of power grant para-utilitarian abilities. See file PUT-812 for an introduction to the subject. Secondly, objects of power translocate anyone who makes physical contact to the astral plane. This is widely believed to be due to the redacted's affiliation with objects of power. Not every individual is allowed in the astral plane, which indicates the redacted evaluates who can or cannot enter. Thirdly, and this is not always the case, objects of power are much more paranaturally redacted than altered items. Looking at the specific criteria that defines an object of power, it's no wonder they are notably rarer than altered items. In fact, we have redacted altered items for every object of power contained within the Bureau. Refer to file 5-29-9485 for full report. Ordinary AWE Stage 1A. Witness testimonies. The first slide was a room with dirty wallpaper and dolls on a shelf. There were lots of dolls. DF. Interview 2002. The house was empty. No one lived there. We played in there a lot. It was our secret playhouse. Jesse Faden, therapy session 2010. I went to school with Neil. Some kid called him Nosebleed Neil. Likely Neil Hosenberg, missing. It was mean. He had asthma. Tom, notably likely Tom Barlow, missing. And his gang, Freddie. Note, likely Frederick Bardwell, missing. Hugo. Note, no one by this name was found in public records. Bullied him. We brought Neil to the dump to play. Dylan Faden, interview 22. Extrapolated information. Unconfirmed existence of additional slide designated house. Ordinary AWE Stage 1B. Witness testimonies. The second slide we called the meadow, but it was really just an empty lot with a bunch of weeds. There was a shack and a phone line. It smelled like flowers there. It was powerful, intoxicating. We had crazy dreams there. It must have been because of the smell. I didn't like it. Didn't like losing control. In the dreams, everything was melting, and then we'd come out. Everything had melted around the projector. Jesse Faden, therapy session 2010. Neil was really into it. We found out he'd been coming there more and more on his own. Then Tom beat the secret out of Neil and found the projector. He and his goons took it. Jesse Faden, therapy session 2010. We thought Neil had got lost inside the meadow when Tom changed the slide, but that's not what happened. Dylan Faden, interview 2002. Extrapolated information. Unconfirmed existence of additional slide designated meadow. Ordinary AWE Stage 2. After what happened at school to Miss Chester, we started spying on Tom and saw where they took the projector. Dylan Faden, interview 2002. Tom and his troglodytes were using the Sled Hill Cave as their headquarters. That's where the projector was. They'd been using the temple slide. We called it that, but really it was a broken concrete thing, like a warehouse or a bomb shelter or something very dark. The not mother lived there with her babies, children. I don't know. She was feeding Tom and the others her milk. They were changing into little monsters. We called them dung monkeys. Jesse Faden, therapy session 2010. Extrapolated information. Unconfirmed existence of additional slide designation temple. Unconfirmed existence of paranatural entity designation not mother. EID 19928. Ordinary AWE Stage 3. Tom and the others had gotten worse, scarier. The math teacher, Mrs. Chester, tried to make them listen, and they pushed over a piano on her. broke her legs. Then Tom bashed her head in. Bye-bye, Miss Chester. I always liked her. I liked math. Dylan Phaeton, interview 2002. That was the tipping point. It was Lord of the Flies level bad. The grown-ups realized something was wrong. The police came and literally dragged Tom and Hugo and the others away. Tom was screaming that the not-mother would make them all go away. They enacted a curfew for every kid in Ordinary. Mom and Dad were pissed, asking us about the dump, about everything. I remember wanting them gone, like Tom had said. When we woke up the next morning, pretty much all the adults had just vanished. Was I responsible? Did I don't know. Jesse Phaeton, therapy session 2010. Extrapolated information. Disappearance of majority of Ordinary's population confirmed to result from slide projector-related AWE. Ordinary AWE Stage 4A. Jesse and me followed the dung monkeys to the cave. There was a lot of them. More of the kids from town had joined up. It was really scary. Jesse grabbed the projector and we ran as fast as we could. They chased us. I fell and hurt my knee. Jesse tried to help me, but the dung monkeys were coming. They were just about to get us, but then Neil showed up. Neil looked like a dog, like a melted dog, but I knew it was him. Neil said a lot of times he didn't like being a boy because Tom just beat him up. I think he liked being a dog. DF, interview 2002. The projector wouldn't turn off, so we changed the slide to the hand. I heard her immediately. She promised to help. Jesse Phaeton, therapy session 2010. Jesse said we could call her Polaris. It's because she was doing stars at school. Dylan Phaeton, interview 2002. Extrapolated information. Additional slide designated hand, SID 36, is verified and in Bureau possession. Unconfirmed existence of paranatural entity designation Dog Neil, EID 19930. Examination of paranatural topics, tangible effect of rituals. Obsessive-compulsive disorder, hoarding, anxiety disorders. While certain manifestations of these conditions were simply the result of mental illness, sometimes the individuals are simply performing redacted, called rituals. The redacted of rituals can vary. Numerology, dream logic, forfeiture, verbal formulae, repetitive action, and causal tethering are just some of the procedures involved. Some rituals are consistent, such as pulling the light switch cord 3 times to enter the motel, but some are erratic. While most people engage in minor rituals every day, the vast majority do not understand the importance behind their actions. Avoiding disaster, amassing luck, or simply locating lost keys are all the results of daily rituals. Individuals who recognize a deeper meaning behind these compulsive actions are inherently aware of the paranatural world, and when located, should be considered for employment at the Bureau. Refer to file redacted for full report. Examination of paranatural topics, interwoven causality of the formation. The formation is a tall stone structure found in Quarry Site Beta, only reachable by placing distinct tokens into the Jukebox objects of power. See OOP 10, case file for details. The formation's exact purpose is redacted, but we can at least examine its relationship with the redacted surrounding it. Measuring devices found to trace evidence of redacted at certain lines running from the formation to the redacted. When examined properly, 4 direct ritual tethers were detected. Some form of sympathetic causality connects the formation with the redacted, which means, in theory, that when certain redacted are performed at one, it will physically affect the other. I've been urged to note here that some individuals believe the formation responds to any fulfillment of purpose or desire in nearby individuals, though I'd like to remind those individuals that we're in the parakinesiology department, not the parafeelings department. I'm proud to report that my team was able to design, construct, and install a permanent detection system. These arches will help rangers identify when the causal tethers are active, allowing them to better redact it. Refer to file 8-38-1989 for full report. Threshold Utility Counter Essay. Thresholds Utility Research. Dr. Darling's recently penned essay titled Redacted contains some glaring omissions that I feel must shine a light on. First, the entire premise of the essay is that quarry threshold is beneficial to the Bureau, while the mold is actively hostile, to use his words. We cannot determine the worth of these dimensions and their life forms using bureaucratic definitions. Secondly, the mold is much more beneficial than some rock. If the redacted creating the mold were reconfigured in their purpose, the structures they could build would rival the greatest skyscrapers. The mold's resistance to various strains of disease we've attempted to introduce could be derived into redacted. Yes, admittedly, this application is more difficult than picking up a rock and gluing it to a wall. But I pause to wonder when the Bureau lost its eagerness for a challenge. Refer to file 2-35-1863 for full report. Jukebox. Songmaster Jukebox, OOP-10-KE. Containment procedure. Item is to be kept in a secure location in the executive sector. See Security Order 239-A. The room must be sealed before usage to prevent unintentional transportation of staff. Description per utility. A classic 1950s jukebox made by Songmaster Entertainment Ltd. The jukebox was found with a single record inside, titled A Song for the Others by Redacted. When this record is played in the object, anyone within earshot is translocated for as long as the album is playing. Those involved in the object's first known incident report being transported to a tropical beach. Exact location unknown. When this object is used in the oldest house, it only transports users to an area located in the recently manifested quarry threshold. Researchers theorize that this site's unique spatial density results in all transitioning material gravitating to this position. As has been observed with other Bureau equipment, the oldest house's unique nature could also be having an effect on the object itself. This object is not bound to any known individual. Attempts by Bureau staff to bind it have resulted in redacted and should not be attempted again. X-ray light box. Containment procedure. No unique procedures needed. Description per utility. The object is a light box used to examine X-ray images. The image cannot be removed from the light box. The information on the image belongs to a patient named Redacted. The object allows periutilitarians to forcibly seize an individual's redacted. The seized individual becomes redacted to the user. The effects last redacted. Once released, the seized redacted as a result of the psychic trauma. The object has no current binder. Background. A janitor named Redacted bound the object at St. Anne's Hospital in Redacted. Soon the building's occupants were redacted by him. The Bureau dispatched an emergency response team to redact the perpetrator, and redact the item. Fatalities numbered in the redacted. For operational details, see case 26-HQ-452. Bright Falls AWE 35. Event summary. An unconfirmed threshold manifestation at Cauldron Lake, WA, resulted in a fictional story written by the author Alan Wake, creating an AWE in which reality was altered to match that of the story, though only locally and for a limited time. Event response. Mr. Kirkland, head of investigations, was alerted on September 13, 2010, by ex-Bureau agent Frank Breaker, see Redacted, that an AWE event was taking place in Bright Falls, WA. Refer to events investigated on 1970, 1976, 1978. Breaker had received a call from Barry Wheeler, Alan Wake's literary agent, on behalf of Breaker's daughter, Sarah, who is the current sheriff of Bright Falls. A Bureau field team arrived at the site 2 days later, only to confirm that the event was over. Interviews were conducted. Refer to the 1970 redacted Thomas Zane, 1976, 1978 Odin Anderson, Tor Anderson. Alan Wake was believed to redacted. Instigator. Eyewitnesses' reports highlight an old light switch, possible object of power, that redacted missing. Wake was not found at the scene. Reports claim he dived into the lake, but no body was recovered in the search. Bright Falls Supplement. Alice Wake, Mr. Wake's wife, was found during the Bureau investigation. She was interviewed and evaluated. She showed signs of severe mental trauma in the form of redacted memory loss. She was later directed to treatment. It was concluded that she had been trapped in the threshold during its manifestation. Notable individuals still missing after the Bright Falls event are FBI agent Robert Nightingale and Dr. Emil Hartman, referred to the Creator's Dilemma and the file The Cauldron Lake Lodge. Bureau researchers believe this event was the result of a forceful perception of subjective reality stemming from Mr. Wake, overlapping on our own. Wake has been flagged as a potential para-utilitarian. See Prime Candidate Program file for more details. In 2011, a book by Clay Stewart, entitled The Alan Wake Files, was published by Roundabout Press, New York and Olympia. Agents interviewed Clay Stewart and suspected minor para-utilitarian sensitivity. It was placed under indefinite surveillance. Notes: a monitoring station was established at Cauldron Lake to alert the Bureau of any future activity. Ordinary AWE 24. Event Summary. An AWE occurred at the town of Ordinary, caused by an object of power, slide projector, ID OOP15, discovered by local children at the dump outside of town. When a specific set of slides are used in the projector, the projected images open doorways to other dimensions. Multiple slides were used by the children, resulting in the disappearance of the town's adult population. Event Response. On August 30th, 2002, siblings Dylan Phaeton, 10 years old, CP6 Materials, and Jesse Phaeton, 11 years old, CP7 Materials, were playing at the local dump when they found a discarded slide projector, COOP15 case files, and Darling presentations redacted for details. A team led by Director Trench and Dr. Darling arrived at the site on September 14th. The AWE had ended, but the team found the Phaeton children, who led them to the slide projector and the slides, which had been burned with the exception of one. Jesse escaped when agents attempted to detain the pair. In total, 17 surviving individuals were found in the town. All of them were brought in for questioning and tests. See interviews redacted and Prime Candidate Program files redacted. Ordinary AWE 24. Details are largely based on interviews conducted with Dylan Phaeton. See interviews redacted and redacted for relevant information, and the obtained therapy sessions of Jesse Phaeton, as well as circumstantial evidence found at the Ordinary site. Note that accounts provided by all three sources contain conflicting data. Example, DF claims that there were 8 slides for the projector. JF mentioned 9 slides. The Bureau found 1 intact slide, designation 36, and the burned remains of 6 others. Unfortunately, these slides are too badly damaged to be used in the projector. Jesse Phaeton is believed to be the individual responsible for burning the slides. Notes: Dr. Darling has ordered that the entirety of the Ordinary town dump be brought to the Bureau for examination and analysis, with the hopes of finding additional slides or other altered materials. Due to the limited space in the investigation sector, this AWE will be investigated in the containment sector. Altered items. Anchor procedures. Ocelot's anchor. Containment procedure. Black rock paneling successfully prevents manifestation of the sphere. Description. Altered effect. A Trotman-style anchor, made of iron with a wooden stock. Surface is rusted in places. Weighs 3,789 pounds. The item generates a persistent blank sphere, the purpose of which is generally unknown. This sphere is always generated at a precise point in relation to the item, specifically redacted horizontal feet and redacted vertical feet from the redacted of the anchor. Appendix 4/25/1983. Redacted, Ranger First Class was dropped into the sphere wearing a diving suit with dedicated oxygen line at redacted AM EST. After 10 minutes and 13 seconds inside the sphere, Redacted's oxygen line was cut at the sphere's border by an unseen force. All agents in the room during Redacted's entry into the spheres experienced vomiting, vertigo, and loss of fingernails within an hour of one another. Ranger Redacted has been declared MIA, presumably dead. Anchor Supplement. Ocelot's anchor. The crew of the White Ocelot first encountered a strange spherical phenomenon while fishing in the Redacted. Witnesses described it as a black sphere with faint light behind it. It hovered just off the bow of the ship. The crew redacted by throwing a tin bucket, which disappeared into the sphere. Soon after, the vessel lost structural integrity. The ship's metal rusted and fell apart within minutes. As the ship sank, the sphere lowered into the water. A passing fishing vessel called the Redacted rescued the 4 surviving crew. Agents were dispatched to the White Ocelot's last known coordinates, Redacted, and began diving operations. On the ocean floor, the agents found the sphere. The ship was entirely destroyed except for its anchor. As agents lifted the anchor off the ocean floor, they noticed the sphere behaved in conjunction with the anchor, moving and stopping as one. Contact with the sphere was avoided, but handling the anchor proved harmless. The item was transported by the Redacted to the U.S. port of Redacted. Upon arriving in New York, it was brought into the Bureau via the Redacted. Balloon procedures. Get well balloon. Containment procedure. Item must be kept away from animals. The cell must be regularly cleaned of the black substance the item produces. All cleaning tools must be redacted, along with the black substance itself. Item is a novelty balloon made of silver mylar. On its face is a colorful message to get well, surrounded by cartoon hearts. A ribbon is attached to the balloon. Item has not stopped floating after a considerable amount of time in the Bureau, which suggests it does not hover through the use of helium. The item produces a dark-colored, sticky substance which drips down its ribbon. Get well balloon supplement. The item was used in the children's ward of a local hospital in Redacted. Witnesses do not recall where the balloon came from. Therapy dogs, part of a program called Redacted, meant to comfort the sick children, were noticeably attracted to the item. They reportedly jumped at the item, licking it when they could. The children claimed the dogs began walking through the walls of the hospital at night, howling in a low pitch. One child described the sound as singing. A few days later, the dogs were all discovered dead, a dark substance leaking from their Redacted. The hospital staff called local authorities, who called the CDC. Bureau agents intercepted this call and arrived at the scene with redacted hours. The item was taken for evaluation, along with the remains of the dogs. See file PAI-2411.B for details. Globe procedures. No unique procedures required. However, contact should be limited, as some report feeling disoriented after touching it. Item is handmade, set in dark wood. The item itself is lacquered, hand-painted, spins freely on all axes. While the continents and oceans are recognizably those of Earth, careful examination has revealed numerous redacted and other geographic additions that do not exist on our planet. One of these islands has a city marked on it named Tanrelo. There are no signatures left by its maker. Physical contact renders objects dizzy and disoriented, with some reporting a feeling of unfamiliarity with their surroundings. This effect seems to grow worse with prolonged contact, culminating in a sense of listlessness and depression. Suicide has been observed in redacted handlers. The item was found in the penthouse suite at Redacted, Toronto, belonging to David Wolfe, who was being investigated for illegally dealing in altered materials. See Case 13HQ37. Bureau agents raided his penthouse and found numerous paranatural belongings, including redacted, and this item. Mr. Wolfe was arrested. Supplementary materials. Article from Toronto Daily. So why would a 36-year-old Bay Street investment trader, filthy rich, married to a model, disappear overnight? That's the question that's kept Toronto high society up at night this last week. Police say it's being looked into. Some nutjob radio show on the States claims he disappeared to join the Illuminati. But it's this reporter's opinion that Mr. Wolfe, bored of his job, sick of his family, left it all behind to retire in some remote beach paradise. Now he's sipping Mai Tais while the world thinks he's dead. Whew! Well, that was a long episode. We've actually got more to read. We'll do that again next time. Maybe we'll have another supplemental episode here. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you'll come back again next time as we play some more here on Control.